Hi, my name is P.K. Hallinan, and I'm the author and illustrator of about 84 children's books. I've been asked to share with you how this all came about and some of the things I've learned along the way. So here we go. The year was 1968, and I was 24 years old. I was married with two young children, Ken and Mike, and I had a very small job in a very large corporation. And for whatever reason, I had a feeling of overwhelming smallness. A note. My wife just said, "Tell them you always wanted to be famous." Okay, honey, I always wanted to be famous. In fact, I remember doing stand-up in the second grade. But mostly, I just wanted my life to count for something, to make a difference, to leave an impression, to let people know I'd once roamed this earth. So I stayed up all night, one rainy night, and I kept asking myself, what can I do? What can I do? And when morning came, I had an answer. I decided I would become a best-selling, famous novelist. That sounded easy enough to me. I think all they had to do was buy 10 packs of cigarettes a day and make 4 pots of coffee and sit at their typewriter writing interesting stuff and get rich. So I decided to do that. And I actually did write 2 complete novels, which are now in a landfill in Kearney Mesa, California, where they belong. But it was also during this time, in mid-December, that my wife came to me and said, "Honey, you're a writer." She had bought off on this too. "You're a writer. Why don't you try writing a children's book for Kenny and Mikey as a Christmas present?" Well, Kenny and Mikey were then 5 and 3 years old. And I had never tried anything like that, but I borrowed some materials from my employer, which I am going to return, and started writing and drawing every night after the kids had gone to bed. Finally, when Christmas morning arrived, Kenny and Michael tiptoed down the stairs and found a book from dear old Dad about their mythical adventures in the jungle, where they make friends with a Harry-on-Mary and a Jungle Kabungle who take them home and tuck them away, and they both snooze snoozily until the next day. Anyway, something very interesting happened that day. Everyone who came over to the house, friends, family, uninvited guests, said, "This is really good, PK. Have you ever considered writing children's books?" Well, I hadn't, but I will tell you a secret about myself. I am highly motivated by praise. So the very next week, I wrote and illustrated my first real book for publication. And it was called How Really Great to Walk This Way. And it was all about the wonderful things we have right in front of us simply because we live on this earth. And it starts off, how really great to walk this way, or walk this way, or walk this way, or lie on the grass on a warm summer day, or do nothing at all if you feel that way. When I finally finished the book, I bought a copy of The Writer's Market, found a publisher named Children's Press, said to myself, "Works for me," and sent the book to them. 5 weeks later, I received a reply, a letter in the mail. They said, "We'd like to publish your book." And I went stark raving crazy. I jumped on my bicycle, which I never rode, and I pedaled down the streets of the San Fernando Valley shouting, "Author, author, author!" I was so excited that the overflow of adrenaline in my body almost made me sick. I mean, imagine, the very first book I sent to the very first publisher was accepted. It's unheard of. It's unheard of. There was only one small hitch in the matter. They said, "We like your book, but we'd like a real artist to do the illustrations." Well, I didn't care. It didn't make any difference to me whatsoever. I couldn't draw for beans. So I figured with his great art, my great words, we would just have a great book and get very rich together. Back then, it took about 9 months for a manuscript to be turned into a book. And 9 months later, I got a phone call from my wife at work, and she said, "Your book has arrived." And I said, "Great, how does it look?" And she said, "Well, maybe you better come home and see for yourself." So I told them I was sick, and I went home. What I saw was extremely disappointing. And here it is. How Really Great to Walk This Way, starring my fine young sons, little Kenny and little Mikey. Wait a minute. Where's little Mikey? It looks like he's become little Michelle. Actually, this didn't bother me because it made good sense to feature a little girl in the book and a little boy in the book. But what bothered me was this. Instead of capturing the joy of the world's free gifts to all of us, his artwork looked more like what you would expect to find in an arithmetic book. And in that one moment, my life changed forever. I decided right then and there that I would never, ever, ever, ever allow someone else to do the illustrations to one of my books, which meant I had to learn how to draw because I was a terrible artist. So I started a new book called The Looking Book, and I worked on it night after night as hard as I could until it was finally done. But when I had finished it, I noticed something very disheartening. My artwork had improved so much during the creation of that book that the whole second half of the book was significantly better than the first half, and I had a decision to make. Do I redraw the whole first half of the book, or do I just send it in the way it is? Well, as I tell the kids that I go around the nation visiting schools, if you don't turn in your very best work, you don't deserve to be successful. So I redrew the entire first half of the book, hoping it wouldn't be better than the second half of the book, because that looping could go on forever, but it wasn't. And then I sent my manuscript to the same publisher, and it was accepted, and this time they used my art. As a note, that book is still in print 44 years later, and was just recently turned into a board book by my publisher, and that's amazing. After that, I created a slew of books, of which I want to mention just a few. In 1977, I wrote a book called That's What a Friend Is. It's a book simply about meeting, making, and keeping friends. It's now been in print for 40 years and was just recently also made into a board book for young readers to chew on, and that's literally, that's why they make board books. In 1981, I wrote a book called I'm Thankful Each Day, which is a particular favorite with the old and the young readers alike. I've received several letters from elderly people in nursing homes and assisted living facilities who keep that book on their bedstand by their beds just for comfort. Also, I was at a signing one afternoon at a school after one of my presentations when a woman came up to me with a very tattered old copy of that book, I'm Thankful Each Day. She said, I hope you don't mind signing this book, but my 14-year-old son recently decided it was time to get rid of all his children's books except this one. He wanted to keep it. It's the only one he wanted to keep. So I signed it. Then in 1989, I wrote a little book just to tell my two sons, Ken and Mike, how much I loved them. The book was called How Do I Love You? And it immediately became a very successful book. Mostly, I think, because it promoted the concept of unconditional love. And finally, in 2003, I wrote a little book called Let's Be Kind, simply to promote caring and kindness in our schools and in every home in the country. One day I found out that a little company called Focus on the Family had just selected this book as one of America's 10 best children's books for 2008. And I must confess I was extremely pleased about that. And that brings me to a little book called Heartprints. A little book called Heartprints. Humorist Gertrude Stein once said, when you finally get there, you find there's no there there. She was actually talking about Oakland, California, but I think this applies equally to people who seek fame, because there's another old saying that goes, question, how much is enough? Answer, just a little more. And yet, I think that medical missionary to Africa and 1952's Nobel Peace Prize recipient, Dr. Albert Schweitzer, said it best. He said this, the only ones among you who will be happy are those who will have sought and found how to serve. The only ones among you who will be happy are those who will have sought and found how to serve. About 25 years ago, on a whim, I went into my office at my home on Siskiyou Summit above Ashland, Oregon, and counted up all the books I had sold to that date. The total came, much to my surprise, to over 1 million copies. At first, I was euphoric. I was out of my mind. I was so happy. But it didn't last very long. Within minutes, I experienced a very sad insight. I realized that I would never be rich enough, famous enough, or anything enough to be happy. Why? Because there's no there. You never really fully arrive. And I was crushed. The good news is, this forced me to take a look at myself, what I was doing, why I was doing it, and how I was thinking. And after several months of deep soul searching, I made one of the most important discoveries of my life, and it was this. It is not what I take in that fills me, it's what I give out. It is not what I take in that fills me, it's what I give out. And I decided to write a book about this, which is called Heartprints. And on the cover of the book is this definition of the word heartprint: the impression left behind by a deliberate act of kindness. It starts out, how many heartprints will you leave today? Will you share with a friend? Will you give hugs away? Will you listen with patience to what others say? How many heartprints will you leave today? And my favorite line in the entire book is this one. Yes, each little kindness leaves heartprints that say, a very nice person has been here today. A pastor friend of mine once said, this book reminds me of the 23rd Psalm where it says, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And I thought, I think he's right. It does remind us of that. So let me ask you, what's following you? What's following you? What's left in your wake as you pass by? Are people better off? Is the room a warmer place? And so forth. Mother Teresa once said, let no one ever come to you without coming away better and happier. I love that line. Let no one ever come to you without coming away better and happier. And I especially like what Johnny Cash's wife, June Carter Cash, said when a reporter asked her what she wanted her legacy to be. She said, I just want to matter. Me too. I just want to matter. And here's what matters. 3 years ago, I went to a Rotary meeting in Ashland where the Sergeant at Arms asked the room a question. What would you like engraved on your tombstone? And no matter what you said, you'd be fined $25 anyway. Now, I had never even thought about this, but I knew instantly what I wanted engraved on my headstone, and it was this. Here lies P.K. Hallinan. People were happy to see him. Now, I knew some vandal would come along and add the word go. People are happy to see him go. But it's a great tribute to a life. And may I ask you, are people happy to see you? Do you light up a room? Do you brighten up a gathering? Do you leave goodness and mercy behind everywhere you go? Yes, I think it's also interesting that the Wizard of Oz had it right all along when he said to the Tin Man, my friend, remember, a heart is not measured by how much you love, but by how much you are loved by others. I think that's a very powerful line. If you are a person who is caring, if you are a person who is giving, if you are a person who is supportive, who is loyal, who leaves people thinking a very nice person has been here today, who is truly loved by others, then you are a person whose life matters, and you are a person who is leaving heartprints behind. I think it's wonderful that so many of our schools have started using my book to promote friendship and to prevent bullying among their kids. One school I know has a Heartprint Week every year around Valentine's Day, and anyone seen doing a deliberate act of kindness gets their name on a red piece of paper shaped like a heart, and it's pinned to one of the walls in one of the hallways of the school. By the time the week is over, all you can see is an ocean of red heartprints covering every wall in the school. So, as I close, let me leave you with just one tiny little question. How many heartprints will you leave today?